Lena sat quietly in the back of the classroom, hoping no one would notice her. She always tried to sit near the window, where she could look outside if the lessons became too overwhelming. She was a small, gentle girl who rarely spoke unless someone asked her a question directly. Most of the time, she wished she could simply melt into her chair and disappear. School was not a bad place for her, but it wasn't a place where she felt seen or understood. That morning, the music room felt different. The teacher, Mrs. Rowan, walked in with a stern expression. The other children whispered among themselves, trying to guess what kind of mood she was in today. Lena already felt her stomach tighten. Whenever the teacher was in one of her impatient moods, she would often pick on the quieter students, especially those who didn't talk much. Lena looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together nervously. She had come to school without breakfast again. Her mother was working a double shift and left early, and Lena didn't want to bother her. She didn't mind. She was used to it by now. But the empty feeling in her stomach made her even more anxious. As the class settled, Mrs. Rowan began talking about the importance of confidence and participation. Her voice echoed sharply in the room. Lena listened quietly, hoping she wouldn't be asked to speak. She never liked standing in front of others. It made her chest feel tight, like there wasn't enough air. The teacher walked slowly between the rows of desks, observing each student. Lena kept her eyes on her notebook. She could almost feel the teacher's presence when she passed behind her, but she stayed still. Maybe if she remained quiet enough, the teacher would forget she was there. But today, luck was not on Lena's side. Mrs. Rowan stopped in front of the classroom, crossing her arms. "Some of you think you can come to class and hide behind silence," she said loudly. "But music is not about hiding. It's about expression. It's about presence. And today, I want to see who among you is brave enough to show that." A few students exchanged nervous glances. A couple of them straightened in their seats, hoping to look confident. Lena's heart began to race. She knew this tone. She knew the teacher was building up to something. The teacher's eyes scanned the room slowly, too slowly, and then they stopped. "Right on, Lena. You," Mrs. Rowan said, pointing directly at her. "Come here." Lena froze. For a moment, she thought maybe the teacher was pointing past her. She turned slightly, but no one sat behind her. A few students snickered under their breath. "Yes, you," the teacher said again. "Come to the front." Lena stood up slowly, gripping the side of her desk for support. Her legs felt weak, as if they might give out. She heard a few more whispers, soft, but sharp enough to sting. She kept her eyes on the floor as she walked toward the front of the room. When she reached the teacher, she stopped, unsure what to do next. "Stand over there," Mrs. Rowan said, gesturing toward the piano in the corner. The old upright piano stood tall and worn, its keys slightly yellowed from years of use. Lena had looked at that piano many times from her seat, always wishing she could sit there just once. But she never dared to ask. She had never played a real piano before, only the broken keyboard at home that missing several keys, and worked only when it felt like it. "Class," the teacher announced. "Today we will see how well our classmates can handle performing under pressure. Let's start with someone who never seems to participate. Maybe a little push will help her open up." She turned to Lena. "Sit. Play something, anything." The words hit Lena like a cold wind. "Play in front of everyone?" Her hands trembled. She knew the teacher didn't expect her to actually play well. She knew this was meant to embarrass her. Another lesson from the teacher about being more vocal, or trying harder. Lena sank onto the piano bench slowly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She could hear the other students whispering behind her. Someone giggled. Someone else said, "She probably doesn't even know which key is which." Another voice muttered, "This is going to be funny." Lena swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. She could feel everyone watching. She could feel the teacher's eyes on her, waiting for her to fail so she could make her point. But even in that heavy moment, something inside Lena stirred. Not confidence, not courage exactly, but something quieter, something familiar. She closed her eyes briefly, and an image appeared in her mind. Her father sitting beside her when she was very small, teaching her how to listen to music, not just hear it. He used to tap on the table, pretending it was a piano, guiding her fingers gently. She remembered the softness in his voice when he told her that music didn't come from the hands. It came from the heart. Her chest tightened at the memory. It had been years since he passed away, but she still carried his lessons with her. Every night she practiced on the broken keyboard he left behind, playing by ear because she couldn't read sheet music well. She didn't need to read it. She could feel it. As she sat there now, in front of the entire class, She didn't feel brave. She didn't feel strong. But she felt the music her father taught her, like a small, warm light inside her. Mrs. Rowan tapped her foot impatiently. "Anytime now," she said. "We don't have all day." Lena placed her hands on the keys carefully, gently, as if the piano might break under her touch. The smooth surface of the keys felt foreign compared to the rough, uneven keys she was used to at home. But underneath the nerves, she felt something familiar. Possibility. Behind her, the whispers continued. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed quietly. She felt a wave of heat rise to her face. She almost stood up. She almost said she couldn't do it. She almost ran back to her seat. But something stopped her. A soft memory. A soft voice. "Just try, Lena. Even a small note can be enough." She took a slow breath. She pressed one key. A single note echoed through the room. It was clear, pure, stronger than she expected. The room went silent. Even the students who had been whispering fell quiet. Something about the way the note sounded calm, balanced caught their attention. Lena opened her eyes slightly, surprised that the sound came from her. She pressed another note, then another. The beginnings of a melody took shape, soft, unsure, but filled with emotion. The teacher raised her eyebrows, clearly not expecting this. Lena's hand still trembled, but as the melody grew, the trembling began to fade. She remembered the tune her father once played, a gentle rhythm full of warmth and comfort. She had practiced it so many nights that it lived inside her. Before she realized it, she was lost in the music, the classroom, the whispers, the fear. They all faded. Only the keys mattered now. Only the feeling. Her fingers moved slowly, but with meaning, touching each key as if telling a secret story. Behind her, the children stared in silence. No one giggled anymore. Mrs. Rowan stood with her arms still crossed, but her expression changed. It wasn't the proud, strict look she always wore. It was confusion, then surprise. Lena continued playing, unaware of the shift happening around her. She didn't know she had captured everyone's attention. She didn't know the teacher was regretting her choice. She didn't know the students were no longer laughing. She played because the music felt safe. The music felt like home. And for the first time in a long time, Lena didn't feel invisible. Just as she reached the end of the small melody, her fingers slipped a little. She pulled her hands back quickly, afraid she had ruined everything. But no one laughed. They remained silent, staring. Lena looked down at her hands again, unsure what had just happened. She didn't know if she had done something wrong. She didn't know if the teacher would scold her for taking too long. She didn't even know if the class liked it. She only knew that for the first time that day, her heart wasn't beating out of fear. It was beating with something else, something lighter. And she had no idea that this moment, one she was forced into, was about to change everything for her. Lena stayed frozen on the piano bench long after the last note faded. She could still feel the keys under her fingertips, warm from her touch. She didn't know if she should stand or sit or apologize for stopping. The silence in the classroom felt heavy, almost like the air had thickened around her. Behind her, the students stared quietly, unsure of what to say. Some of them had expected a messy, awkward performance. Some expected her to press the wrong notes and make a fool of herself. But none of them expected what they had just heard. Even the ones who liked to tease others found themselves speechless. Mrs. Rowan cleared her throat, breaking the tension, though her voice didn't carry the same confidence it usually did. "Well," she said, trying to maintain her usual tone. "That was unexpected." Lena lowered her eyes, afraid she had done something wrong. She slowly stood up, her legs still a little shaky. She wasn't used to so many eyes on her. She held her hands together, quietly waiting to be told what to do next. "Go back to your seat," the teacher said finally. Her voice was calm, but Lena could sense something different in it, something unsure. Lena nodded and walked back to her desk, avoiding the students' stares. Her cheeks felt warm. Part of her wished she had never been called to the front. Another part of her felt something strange, almost like relief, or maybe even pride. But she pushed that feeling away. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to disappear again. As she sat down, she heard a whisper from the girl next to her. "How did you do that?" the girl asked softly, not teasing, but curious. Lena shook her head. "I don't know," she whispered back. The girl blinked, clearly not satisfied with the answer. But she didn't push further. Instead, she kept sneaking glances at Lena, as if trying to understand something new about her. For the rest of the class, Mrs. Rowan continued her lesson, but her mind seemed somewhere else. She stumbled over her words a few times. She looked toward the piano more than once, almost as though replaying Lina's performance in her head. When the bell rang and the students began gathering their things, Mrs. Rowan called out, "Everyone, remember to bring your assignments tomorrow." Then she paused. "Lina," she said, "stay for a moment." A few children glanced back, curious. Lina felt her stomach twist again. She waited until everyone left before approaching the teacher. Mrs. Rowan looked at her with an expression Lina had never seen before, soft, thoughtful, almost confused. "Where did you learn to play like that?" she asked. Lina looked down at her shoes. "At home," she whispered. "Did someone teach you?" Lina shook her head. "I just tried to copy what I hear." The teacher studied her for a moment, as if trying to decide whether she was telling the truth. "Well," she finally said, "you have potential. Real potential." The words felt strange to Lina. She wasn't used to praise, especially from someone like Mrs. Rowan. She nodded slowly, unsure what to say. "You can go now," the teacher said quietly. Lina walked out of the classroom feeling confused, unsettled, and strangely hopeful. The hallway buzzed with noise as students rushed to lunch. As she joined the crowd, a few kids turned their heads to look at her, something that almost never happened. She heard little murmurs. "That was her. She can actually play. I didn't know she could do that." She hugged her backpack closer to her body, trying to make herself smaller. She wasn't used to being noticed. It made her uneasy. She found a quiet corner in the cafeteria and sat alone as always. She opened her lunchbox. Though it held only a small piece of bread, she ate slowly, pretending she wasn't hungry. Across the room, a group of students whispered to each other, sneaking glances at her. She tried to ignore them. After lunch, the day continued, but the feeling of being watched stayed with her. In math class, a boy leaned over and said, "You were amazing earlier." Lina blinked at him. She didn't know how to respond. "Thank you," she said softly. The boy smiled before turning back to his work. The rest of the afternoon passed with more whispers, more curious glances, and more attention than Lina had ever received in her life. By the time the final bell rang, she felt exhausted. She wasn't used to so much energy being directed toward her. She only wanted to go home. Lina walked slowly, clutching her old backpack. The sky was cloudy, and the air smelled like rain. She took her usual path, passing small houses and quiet streets. When she reached home, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was silent. Her mother wouldn't come home until evening. Lina walked to her small bedroom, where the old keyboard sat on a cracked wooden table. She ran her fingers across its surface. The keyboard was missing 3 keys. The volume button didn't work anymore. Some notes sounded shaky or too soft, but it was still her favorite place in the world. She sat and played the same melody she had played at school, letting her fingers move naturally. She didn't think about the whispers or the attention. She didn't think about the teacher's expression. She just played. And as the music filled her small room, she remembered her father again. She remembered the way he used to smile when she pressed the right notes. She remembered the way he said, "Music will never leave you, as long as you hold it close." A soft warmth filled her chest, but that warmth didn't last long. A sudden knock on the front door made her jump. She froze for a moment, unsure whether she should answer it. No one ever visited. Another knock came, louder this time. She got up slowly and walked to the door. When she opened it, she almost stepped back in surprise. It was Mrs. Rowan. Her teacher stood on the porch, holding a small notebook in one hand. She seemed slightly out of breath, as if she had been walking quickly. "Hello, Lina," she said gently. Lina stared at her, unsure what to say. "May I come in?" the teacher asked. Lina hesitated. Her home was small and simple, nothing like the homes of other children. She felt embarrassed, but she also knew it would be rude to say no. She opened the door wider. Mrs. Rowan stepped inside, looking around quietly. She didn't comment on the small space or the old furniture. Instead, her eyes went straight to the broken keyboard. "You practice on that?" she asked, her voice soft. Lina nodded. The teacher walked closer and pressed one of the keys. It made a thin, weak sound. "You played the way you did today. On this?" Lina nodded again. For a moment, Mrs. Rowan said nothing. She looked at Lina with a new expression, one that held no frustration, no disappointment, no judgment. Instead, it held something warm, something almost protective. "Lina," she said quietly, "you're very special. You have a gift, and I didn't see it before." Lina didn't know how to react. She simply stood still. "I didn't mean to embarrass you today," the teacher continued. "I thought you were avoiding effort. But now I understand. I was wrong. Lina's chest tightened. She wasn't used to adults admitting they were wrong. Mrs. Rowan took a slow breath. I want to help you. But to do that, I need you to trust me. And I need you to believe in yourself a little more. Lina didn't answer right away. Trust was not something she gave easily. But she could see honesty in the teacher's face. She could hear softness in her voice. Finally, she nodded. The teacher smiled gently, not sharply like before. Good, she said. I'll come by again tomorrow. There's something I want to show you. She headed toward the door, but paused. Keep practicing, she said softly. You're going to need it. Then she left. Lina closed the door slowly and leaned against it. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew one thing. Today had changed something. Not just at school, not just with her teacher. Something inside her had changed too, and she didn't know whether to be scared or excited. Maybe a little bit of both. The next morning, Lina woke up earlier than usual. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way her teacher had stood at her door yesterday. Maybe it was the way she had spoken, not strict, not sharp, but gentle, almost caring. Or maybe it was simply the strange feeling sitting in her chest since yesterday, something between fear and hope. She got dressed slowly, tying her shoelaces with extra care. The house was quiet. Her mother had already left for work, leaving a small note on the table telling Lina to take care of herself, and that she would be home late. Lina folded the note neatly and put it in her pocket. She always kept these notes. They made her feel less alone. Before leaving the house, she walked to the old keyboard and pressed a few keys softly. The weak sounds filled the room, and she closed her eyes for a moment. She wished she had more time before school, but she didn't want to be late. The walk to school felt different today. The air was cooler, and the clouds hung low, but Lina felt strangely awake. Every now and then, she thought about what the teacher had said, that there was something she wanted to show her. Lina didn't know what that meant. She tried not to think about it too much, but the curiosity wouldn't leave her. When she arrived at school, she walked into the building quietly. A few students were already there, talking loudly, laughing, moving in groups like they always did. Lina kept her gaze low, hoping no one would notice her, but someone did. A girl from her class walked up to her with a shy smile. "Hi," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Your piano thing yesterday, it was really good." Lina blinked, surprised someone was speaking to her this early. "Thank you," she whispered. Before the girl could say more, two other students came over, something that had never happened to Lina before. "Is it true you learned by yourself?" one boy asked. She nodded. "That's amazing," another said. "I can't even play one song." Lina didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to compliments. For a moment, she wondered if they were teasing her, but their faces looked genuine. The bell rang before the conversation could continue. Students rushed to their classrooms, and Lina followed, her heart beating a little faster than normal. Attention was still new to her. She didn't know what to do with it. When she reached the music room for class later that day, the first thing she saw was Mrs. Rowan standing near the piano. The teacher looked calmer than usual, as if she had been waiting for Lina. When their eyes met, Mrs. Rowan gave her a small nod. "Sit anywhere you like," the teacher said to the class. Lina walked to her seat quietly. She tried to look at her notebook, but her eyes kept drifting toward the front of the room. She wondered if her teacher would ask her to play again. The thought made her nervous, but a tiny part of her also felt excited. Class settled, and the teacher clapped her hands lightly. "Before we begin today's lesson, I want to address something that happened yesterday." Immediately, the room buzzed. Students leaned forward, whispering to each other. Mrs. Rowan raised her hand, and the room fell quiet. "I asked one of your classmates to play, expecting it to be a simple exercise, but what I witnessed was far more than that." Several students looked toward Lina. She shrank in her seat, wishing she could disappear. "Talent can come from anywhere," the teacher continued, "and sometimes it hides where we least expect it." Lina felt her cheeks warm. The teacher didn't say her name. She didn't have to. Everyone already knew. After class ended, before Lina could pack her things, Mrs. Rowan walked up to her. "Come with me," she said kindly. Lina's heart jumped. She followed the teacher out of the room and down the hallway. They walked past classrooms, past the art room, past the library, until they reached a quiet corner of the school she had never been to before. The teacher unlocked a small door and pushed it open. Inside was a tiny room, with a single window and a polished piano, not old or broken like the one in the classroom, but clean, shining, and well cared for. "This," Mrs. Rowan said, is the practice room. Most students don't know it exists. It's usually for rehearsals and special lessons. Lena stepped inside carefully, as though she might disturb the air. The piano took her breath away. She had never been this close to a piano like this one, with all its keys working, one that wasn't chipped or worn. The teacher closed the door behind them. I want to hear you play again, she said softly. Not because I want to test you, not to prove anything. I just want to understand what you can do. Lena hesitated. Her hands felt shaky again. She looked at the piano seat, unsure whether she should sit. It's just me, the teacher said gently. No audience, no pressure. Lena took a slow breath and walked toward the piano. She sat down, placing her fingers lightly on the keys. The surface felt smooth, warm under her touch. Not like her keyboard at home, not like the old classroom piano. She pressed one key. The sound was rich and full, filling the room in a way she'd never heard before. She felt the vibration run through her fingertips. The teacher watched her closely, but not in a harsh way, more like she was witnessing something rare. Play whatever you want, the teacher said. Lena closed her eyes. She didn't think too hard. She didn't plan. She let her fingers find a melody naturally, one she had played many times in her room, one that reminded her of comfort. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then more confidently as the melody took shape. The sound filled the small room beautifully. The piano responded to her touch in a way her old keyboard never could. The notes blended together like a story coming to life. The teacher stepped closer, her eyes wide. Lena played softly, gently, like she was telling a secret. She let the melody rise and fall. Let it wrap around her. Let it fill the quiet room. When she finished, she lifted her hands slowly from the keys. She kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, soaking in the last echo. When she opened her eyes, she saw the teacher staring at her, not with surprise this time, but with something deeper. Lena, she whispered, do you know how rare that is? Lena shook her head. I just play what I feel. The teacher smiled softly. Exactly. And that's a gift. Lena's heart fluttered. She didn't know what to do with those words. Mrs. Rowan sat beside her. Listen, she said gently. There's something important I want to talk to you about. You have a natural talent, one that most children don't have even after years of lessons. Lena lowered her gaze. I just practice a lot. That may be true, the teacher said. But this is more than practice. This is something special. Lena felt a strange warmth in her chest. She didn't know how to handle so much praise. She had never been told she was special before. Not like this. Not with such certainty. The teacher continued. I want to help you grow. I want to give you real lessons. Real training. You deserve that. Lena's eyes widened. Lessons? Yes, after school, here, with me. Lena looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly. No one had ever offered her something like this, but she whispered, I don't know if I can. The teacher's voice softened. Because you're scared? Lena nodded. Mrs. Rowan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Being scared doesn't mean you can't do something. It just means it matters to you. Lena looked up at her teacher. There was no judgment in her eyes, only kindness. What if I'm not good enough? She whispered. Then we learn, the teacher said simply. Together. Lena swallowed hard. For the first time, she realized someone truly believed in her. Not because they had to, not because they wanted something from her, but because they saw something in her that she didn't yet see in herself. She nodded slowly. The teacher smiled warmly this time. Good, we start today, for the next hour. The teacher taught her simple warm-ups and small exercises. Lena soaked in every word, every correction, every encouragement. And with each passing minute, she felt something growing inside her, a quiet confidence she had never felt before. When the lesson ended, the teacher said, You did very well today. Lena felt her face warm again. Thank you, she whispered. As she walked home later, the sky had brightened. The clouds were still thick, but a soft glow peeked through them. Lena felt lighter than usual, almost as if her steps were lifted by the music still playing in her mind. She didn't know where all of this would lead. She didn't know what the teacher had planned for her future. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't walking alone, and she couldn't help but wonder if this was only the beginning. What would come next? The little girl stood there with her hands still pressed together, trying to stop them from shaking. The room around her felt heavier than ever before, but something inside her had changed. The music teacher, who had been so confident and almost amused earlier, now looked unsure. The other students were stunned into silence, not because someone told them to be quiet, but because they had nothing left to say. It was as if the whole room had paused in time. As the little girl slowly stepped back from the piano, her breathing was unsteady, but her eyes were brighter than before. She had expected to be laughed at or maybe punished for ruining the class. But instead, she saw wide eyes, open mouths, and a strange kind of respect she had never received. For the first time, she felt seen, not because someone forced her to play, but because her music had spoken louder than any words. The teacher cleared her throat, but her voice wasn't as strong as it had been earlier. She tried to speak in her usual firm tone, but even she couldn't hide the surprise. Something about the girl's performance had touched her, even if she didn't want to admit it. She glanced down at her attendance sheet, pretending to look at something important, just to avoid making eye contact with anyone. The other children whispered among themselves now, not in a mocking tone, but in amazement. Some looked at the girl with confusion, wondering how she could have hidden such a gift. Others looked guilty because they had laughed at her earlier. A few even felt inspired, though they wouldn't dare to say it out loud. A single moment had changed the energy of the entire class. The girl stood quietly, waiting for what would happen next. She didn't know whether she should sit down or leave the room. Her heart still thumped against her ribs, but there was a warmth spreading through her chest, a kind of calm she hadn't felt before. She remembered her grandmother's voice telling her, "Music will always protect you." Maybe, she thought, that was true. The teacher finally looked up. Her eyes landed on the girl, and she hesitated again. She had expected a messy noise, a clumsy tune, something that would make everyone laugh. She had not expected real talent. She tried to gather herself, straightened her shoulders, and said something about continuing the lesson. But her voice cracked slightly, and she quickly moved on, pretending everything was normal. But nothing felt normal. The lesson went on, but no one was listening. Everyone kept thinking about what had just happened. The teacher's words floated above their heads, meaningless now. They kept glancing at the piano, then at the girl, then at the teacher. Some felt embarrassed for how they had behaved earlier. Others felt confused by the sudden shift in mood. The girl simply sat quietly, her hands on her lap, still tingling from the keys she had touched. When the class finally ended, the students slowly gathered their things. They usually ran out of the door quickly, but this time they moved differently. Some walked past the girl with shy smiles. A few murmured tiny compliments, too quiet and awkward to really count, but sincere enough that she noticed. One girl gently touched her shoulder before leaving, which surprised her even more. The girl didn't know what to say. She simply lowered her head with a small nod. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She didn't know whether she should smile or just stay quiet. The emotions inside her were too many and too mixed to understand. As she stepped outside the classroom, she felt the air on her face, cool and soft. It felt like a small comfort after all the tension she had felt inside. She walked slowly down the hallway, taking her time because her legs still felt shaky. Every sound around her seemed distant, as if her mind was still inside the music she had played. While she walked, she remembered the moment her fingers touched the piano. She remembered how the sound flowed out, almost on its own. She hadn't meant to play anything special. She had only wanted to survive the moment. But something inside her had pushed her forward, something she didn't fully understand yet. As she passed a window, she noticed her reflection. She barely recognized herself. She looked braver, still small, still quiet, but braver than she had ever seen herself. She paused for a moment, studying her own face, then continued walking. On her way out of the building, she saw the teacher standing near the door, speaking with another staff member. When the teacher noticed her, she stiffened slightly. Their eyes met for a moment. It wasn't hostility this time. It wasn't amusement. It was something more complicated, something like respect, mixed with guilt, mixed with confusion. The teacher didn't say anything, and neither did the girl. They simply held that brief eye contact before the girl lowered her gaze and walked out. But something had definitely changed between them. Outside, the sunlight felt warm on her skin. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with fresh air. The world felt different now, not bigger or smaller, just different. She walked toward the gate where she usually waited. She could still hear the music in her head, playing softly like a secret song only she could hear. After a few moments, two classmates approached her shyly. They didn't know how to start a conversation with her. For years, she had been the quiet one in the back, the one nobody noticed. But now they wanted to talk to her, even if they didn't know how. "Hey, that was nice," one of them mumbled. "Really nice," the other added. She didn't know what to say at first. She looked at them with gentle eyes, unsure whether they were being honest or just polite. but their expressions looked sincere. "Thank you," she finally whispered. It felt strange to say it, but it also felt good. The girls exchanged quick, shy smiles and walked away, leaving her standing alone again. But the loneliness didn't feel heavy now. It felt peaceful. She sat on a nearby bench, letting her legs rest. She looked at her hands again. They looked the same as always, small, soft, a little shaky, but now she understood how powerful they could be. She wondered if her grandmother would be proud of her. The thought brought a warm ache to her heart. As she sat there, she noticed the teacher walking outside the building, heading toward the parking area. The teacher hesitated again when her eyes fell on the girl sitting alone. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't know how, so she turned slightly and pretended to be focused on her phone. But after a moment, she changed direction and walked toward the girl. The girl looked up, surprised. The teacher stopped a few steps away, took a slow breath, and said quietly, "You did well today." It wasn't loud. It wasn't formal. It wasn't forced. It sounded real. The girl stared at her, confused. She wasn't used to compliments from adults, especially not from strict teachers. "Thank you," she replied softly. The teacher nodded, her expression still unsure. She seemed to struggle with her next words. You've been hiding this talent," the teacher said awkwardly. The girl shook her head slowly. "I didn't hide it. I was just scared." That answer hit the teacher harder than the girl expected. The teacher lowered her gaze for a moment, thinking about her own behavior. She realized she had pushed the girl to the piano not to help her, but to embarrass her. And yet, the girl had turned the moment into something beautiful. After a few seconds, the teacher said, "You should keep playing." The girl nodded. "I will." The teacher hesitated again, then said something she had never said before. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." The little girl blinked, stunned by the apology. "It's okay," she said gently. The teacher gave her a small, uncertain smile, then walked away. The girl sat there quietly, feeling a mix of relief and confusion. The apology felt sincere. The moment didn't erase the teacher's earlier behavior, but it showed something important. People could change, even adults. As she watched the teacher walk away, she wondered what would happen next. She didn't know exactly where her music would lead her, but she felt something new growing inside her, a kind of confidence she had never felt before. And she had no idea that the moment she played the piano was only the beginning of everything that was about to come. The next morning, the little girl woke up earlier than usual. She lay quietly in her small bed, staring at the soft light coming through the window. For a long moment, she didn't move. She simply listened to the quietness around her, and to the soft echo of the music she had played the day before. It felt like a memory she didn't want to lose. Her home was simple, and the house was still asleep. She could hear the distant sound of someone outside sweeping the street, and a bird singing on the window ledge. Everything felt calm, yet inside her chest was a gentle excitement she could not fully understand. She slowly sat up, brushing her hair away from her face. Her hands rested on her lap. They were the same hands she had looked at so many times before, the same hands she had doubted, the same hands she had hidden. But now they felt different, as if they carried a quiet magic she had finally allowed the world to see. She got dressed and stepped into the small living room, where her grandmother's old piano sat in the corner. It was slightly out of tune, and some keys didn't work well, but she loved it. It had been her grandmother's pride, and now it was her safe place. She walked over and gently ran her fingers across the keys without pressing them. She remembered how her grandmother would sit beside her, teaching her little melodies, supporting her tiny hands as she learned to play her first notes. The memory felt warm and alive. After a moment, she pressed a single key. The sound was soft and familiar. She pressed another, then another, creating a little tune. It was not the same as what she had played in class. It was something smaller, gentler, something that felt like a whispered conversation between her and her grandmother. She played for a few minutes, letting her mind float freely. The room filled with the delicate sound of her music, and she felt peaceful. The fear she had carried for so long was still there, but something stronger was growing around it. Later, she got ready for school. She put on her shoes and carried her small bag. Outside, the morning air was cool, brushing lightly against her skin. She walked slowly, not because she was nervous, but because she wanted to think. When she reached the school gate, she noticed a group of children whispering among themselves. Usually, she would lower her head and walk past quietly, but today was different. Their whispers were not sharp or mocking. They were curious. When they saw her, the whispers softened, A few of the kids looked at her with shy smiles. One boy lifted his hand slightly, unsure whether to wave. She gave him a small nod, and he smiled before turning away quickly. She didn't know how to react. Everything felt strange, but not in a bad way, just unfamiliar. As she entered the building, she felt nervous again, not because she feared being laughed at, but because she didn't know what the day would bring. Yesterday had changed too much. When she stepped into her classroom, some students were already inside. They looked at her, and instead of ignoring her as usual, they left a little space for her to pass. She slowly walked to her seat. Her heart felt tight, but not painfully, more like it was adjusting to something new. A few minutes later, the teacher entered. The room went quiet. The teacher looked at the class, then at the girl. There was no harshness in her expression now, only a thoughtful calm. "Good morning," the teacher said. "Good morning," the class replied. The teacher paused for a moment, as if she was gathering courage. Then she turned to the girl. "Would you come here for a moment?" she asked. The girl's breath caught. For a second, she feared something was wrong, but the teacher's tone wasn't sharp or commanding. It was gentle, almost uncertain. She slowly stood and walked toward the front of the room. Her heartbeat quickened, and her hands felt warm. The teacher looked at her with careful eyes. "I thought about what happened yesterday," the teacher said softly, "and I want to say something in front of the class." The room was silent. Even the smallest movement stopped. The teacher took a slow breath. "I didn't treat you the way I should have," she said. "I thought you weren't paying attention, and I made a decision without thinking about how it would make you feel. I'm sorry." The little girl stared at her, unsure what to say. The class whispered quietly, surprised. They had never seen a teacher apologize to a student before. The teacher continued, "Yesterday, you showed all of us something beautiful, and I want everyone to know that what you did took a lot of courage. I hope you keep playing. You have a gift." The girl's chest tightened. She swallowed hard, her throat suddenly warm. She nodded softly. "Thank you," she whispered. The teacher smiled gently and motioned for her to return to her seat. The class watched her walk back, and some students even tapped on their desks lightly as a way of cheering without making noise. She sat down, unsure whether to smile or cry. Everything felt overwhelming, but in a gentle way. The morning went by slowly. The teacher taught the lessons with a calmness she had never shown before. Every now and then, she would glance at the little girl, not with discomfort, but with a thoughtful respect. At break time, something happened that the girl never expected. A group of students approached her desk. They looked nervous, as if they were unsure whether she would talk to them. "Can we sit with you?" one girl asked. The little girl blinked. No one had ever asked her that before. "Yes," she said quietly. They sat around her, awkward at first, but slowly more comfortable. They asked her small questions about music, about how long she had been playing, about her grandmother's piano. She answered as best as she could, still shy but not scared. Then one of the girls said, "You were amazing. I've never heard anything like that." Another added, "Yeah, you're really good. You should teach us sometime." The girl's face warmed with a shy smile. It felt strange to be admired, but it was a feeling she didn't mind. Later that day, the principal visited the classroom. She rarely came during lessons, so everyone sat up straight. She spoke quietly with the teacher for a moment, then looked at the girl. "I heard what happened yesterday," the principal said gently. "Some things spread fast in a school." The little girl felt her heart skip. The principal continued, "Your talent is special. I'd like to talk to you after class." The girl nodded, unsure what this meant. When school ended, she walked to the principal's office with slow steps. The principal welcomed her inside and offered her a seat. "I want to help you grow," the principal said kindly. "We have a small music program here, but it hasn't been active for a long time. After hearing about you, I think it's time we started again." The girl's eyes widened. "I'd like you to be part of it," the principal continued. "We can arrange practice time, maybe bring someone to help teach, and someday, if you want, you could perform at our school events." The girl's heart fluttered. She had never imagined anything like that. "Would you like that?" the principal asked. The girl nodded slowly, then faster. "Yes," she whispered. The principal smiled warmly. "Good, then let's start something new together." The girl left the office with a lightness in her step. Everything felt unreal. She walked toward the school gate, and as she stepped outside, she looked up at the sky. It was bright and open, like a promise walking home. She let her fingers dance in the air as if she were playing invisible keys. She replayed everything in her mind: the teacher's apology, the student's kindness, the principal's offer. Each memory felt like a small gift. When she reached home, she ran to the piano and sat down. She touched the keys gently, as if greeting an old friend. Then she played. She didn't play the piece from school. She played something new, something that felt like hope, like courage, like the beginning of a story she never thought she would have. As the music filled the small room, she smiled softly. She finally understood her talent wasn't meant to stay hidden. Her music wasn't meant to be silent. This was just the beginning.